All right, folks, we are back for yet another episode of Fresh Juice, an indie game podcast, where I am one of your hosts. I am Tommy Fresh. I am happy to be here, and joined as always is my co-captain of this wonderful podcast, my cousin, my friggin' life partner. No, maybe not that, but he is here, and he is
Matty Juice, and I'm here. What's going on, folks? It's good to be back for episode 10 of the Fresh Juice podcast. Can you believe it? Double digits, Tom.
Double digits is huge. I think that is the first big milestone that a podcast can have, and we've made it, right? And to be honest, it's been a breeze. You know, I've enjoyed. You know, listen, we have bumps in the road, right? You know, behind the cameras, Matt and I just fight all the time. But you know, that's a joke.
Absolutely.
We're just like, oh, let's play this game and then talk about it. But it's been a lot of fun, and well, that's it. That's actually, you know, we're ending the podcast now. Just kidding, because we have about 1,000 more episodes to do after this, because this game that we're reviewing today on the main squeeze is pretty neat. Pretty neat. I'm going to say it's a neat game, and I think a lot of you are going to enjoy us talking about it. And I'm also going to enjoy kind of feeling out how you feel about the game. It's called Born of Bread, and we'll get into more details about it soon when we get to the main squeeze. But how are you doing, Matty? And what's been going on this week?
Yeah, doing pretty well. Over the weekend, went to a wedding, so that was fun. Cost a fortune in Ubers, though. I'll tell you, we spent like $150 on Ubers. That was just like, geez, I know it was in Brooklyn, so you know, I guess they're getting that New York rate or whatever. But other than that, the wedding was fun. I watched my Eagles get slaughtered by the 49ers, so that was less fun. And yeah, it's Monday. You know, I had a good start to the week, a good work day. It's super excited to talk about the this game for the main squeeze. And yeah, overall, it's been pretty solid. What about you, Tommy?
Well, yeah, I am glad that you had a great week. The Uber thing sucks, but weddings are a ton of fun. I love a good wedding, and we'll actually be at one together next month. I'm pretty excited about with our good buddy Cam. Now,
Yeah.
my week was busy. I had a tournament in Columbus, Ohio for the game that I play, Flesh and Blood, which my other podcast is about. And it was fun. It was a 10K that I played in. So for those of you who don't know, it's not a race. I'm not running 10 kilometers. It's $10,000 of prizing in the one tournament. And I managed to go 6-2 in the 8 rounds that we played, which means that I got 13th. And 13th was good enough to give me, well, obviously top 16, and it gave me $225, which is pretty cool. Nice little, you know, kind of evens out on the hotel a little bit, and also qualified for a 50K that's going to happen next year, probably around the same time, which will be good. It'll be right after my wedding. And you know, maybe I can recoup some cash from doing that. But it was a great time. Other than that, you know, I got to see a lot of my Flesh and Blood friends and gamer friends, and hang out with them, get some dinners, and just like be around people I really enjoy. And then I drove to Hershey where I work, and I stayed over there last night. I got
Hershey
to watch
Park, right?
Hershey, Hershey Park, and I got to watch my Packers beat the Chiefs, which was very exciting. You know, Jordan Love, we love you. You're the future of this team. You know, back to back great quarterbacks. Oh, can you believe it? You know, I know a lot of people out there are like, no, you don't get to have that all the time, but it seems like we do. So, but it's still a very young team, and a lot can go wrong, and I'm sure it will. But other than that, work was okay today. It's just a lot of driving and like just trying to squeeze in some gaming too, like outside of trading cards, you know. And luckily, I was able to play Born of Bread on the Switch, which definitely helped me play it this week. Which it was a lot of traveling, so
Yeah,
a lot of fun. But do you want to get to some news here, Matt?
Let's do it. Let's dive into some news. So I threw in here. This is just a reminder, really, at the end of the day. But the Game Awards are on December 7th, so that's in 3 days. So that'll be the day after you guys are listening to this episode, if you're listening on release day. So yeah, just a reminder, tune into the Game Awards. It's probably gaming's like biggest event, I would say. That's where kind of everybody comes together and checks out obviously all the accolades that these great games are getting, but also some potential announcements for some new games. And I'm sure for next week's episode, we'll be talking about some games, indie games that were announced on Thursday that look cool, and we'll just do kind of a recap of that. But yeah, I'm super pumped for the Game Awards. I try to watch them every year. I love co-streaming them as well, so that's always a great time. And I even think I don't know if it was no, it wasn't the Game Awards, but I have a fantastic reaction to when Gears 4 first got announced because I'm a big Gears of War fan. For those who don't know, and I was just like losing my mind watching Gears 4 get announced. I think it was actually E3. Ended up winning a contest because of it. So pretty much now, anytime there's like a big gaming event, I'm always like, I should co-stream it or at least record my reactions because there's people out there that have contests, I guess, of who has the best reaction. But yeah. So Tommy, are you into the Game Awards? Do you tune in off like every year or like how are you feeling about it?
Well, I always enjoy seeing what wins, right? Because I'm a fair weather AAA game player, right? It's mostly I play mostly Nintendo AAA, but I'll play your Elden Rings and stuff like that as well. So I'm always interested to see what wins, and definitely the independent stuff. And I'm just looking. I'm here on the website right now and just kind of looking at what was nominated, and the independent categories what we're most, I guess, invested in. Cocoon, which we reviewed episode 1. Very excited to see that on there. Beautiful game. It's not my pick for the win, but I'm glad it's there. We got Dave the Diver, which we talked about the issues with that being there, and then we also have Dredge, which this game is awesome. I love Dredge, and I really hope Dredge wins. Sea of Stars, I didn't get to play, but I watched it, like the updates for that game, and I'm happy that it's on there, and it also makes me want to pick it up. And the Viewfinder, which I don't know a lot about, which if it wins, obviously, I mean, it's worth checking out anyway. But I guess there's also best debut indie game. So I guess that means like first time big game for these studios. I'm assuming that's the criteria, which is Cocoon, Dredge, and Viewfinder are all on that. But also Pizza Tower and Venba, which I don't really know a lot about, but I'm just happy that these Game Awards have these categories because, the David Diver stuff removed, it's very important to feature these games because, it's tough for like an indie game to go head to head with some of the biggest AAA games in the world. And not for good reason, right? These AAA games are excellent, right? I don't think I've ever disagreed with a winner of the actual Game of the Year award. So
yeah,
I have no indies have ever won, but there have been indies nominated, right?
Yeah, I don't know if there's been an indie game that has won. I can try to look that up right now, but there's definitely been indie games nominated. I'm trying to think of maybe some of them that might have been nominated. I'm trying to see here. I think Stray was nominated for Game of the Year, which is that I think it might be a PlayStation exclusive where you play as the stray cat.
Yeah.
And that was nominated, did not win. I think Hades was nominated as well.
Hades? I think Dead Cells at one point, maybe?
Dead Cells, yeah. I'm trying to see if there's any other ones in here that are truly indie. Maybe Beat Saber might have been nominated when that came out. I know that's a VR game. I'm not sure. I honestly I think the last Game of the Year indie game was Journey from 2012. I think Journey won Game of the Year. I don't know if
really?
Played Journey, but I think it did win Game of the Year. But I could be wrong on that. Maybe the listeners can correct us and tweet at us at Fresh Juice Pod on Twitter and let us know. But yeah, and you mentioned Viewfinder as well. I've actually played Viewfinder. for a bit. I maybe have a few hours in the game. It is a really interesting game. It has a really unique mechanic of, as kind of the title suggests, of you kind of have your perspective, and you can kind of set a set a perspective and kind of walk into a photo almost, and
Mm.
like that's how you like kind of complete puzzles. Is you're It's all based on the perspective of how you're looking at it. So it's really interesting. I don't think it's going to win Game of the Year from what I've heard, or at least Indie Game of the Year. From what I've heard, it seems like a lot of people want Sea of Stars to win. I keep seeing Sea of Stars pop up. I've seen a few people say Cocoon, but I think Sea of Stars, and I haven't played it, but it seems like that's probably the front runner for Indie Game of the Year. But yeah, obviously great selection, other than the Dave the Diver stuff going on. But um, you know, at the end of the day, it's a win for the indie industry, right, or indie games in general. So yeah, very curious to see kind of what takes the trophy there. But yeah, we have another news article here. Unless you had anything else to add, Tommy,
No,
to
no. I
the
mean,
Game Awards.
like I would not be surprised if Sea of Stars won, right? Because was it is it like a it's the Messenger? It's like a spiritual
Spiritual
sequel.
successor, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
but like like an RPG, like almost like Chrono Trigger. It
yeah,
definitely has that vibe. Which
yeah.
I mean, like I love Chrono Trigger, so like I understand like why people really are kind of into this game. It's also beautiful, just like so
Oh
like the
yeah.
art in that game is just absolutely insane. But my pick is Dredge for sure. Which for anybody, I gotta say, because like I played Dredge before we started this podcast, and I've mentioned this before, but Dredge, you gotta play that game. It's so freaking good. And obviously they agree to nominate it. But what is this new article that you posted here, Matt?
Yeah. So it's titled "The Next EA Originals Indie Game Has Been Leaked." So for those who, excuse me, man, I'm coughing up a storm here. For those who don't know, EA Originals has had some really fantastic indie games that have come out. The Unravel series, Unravel 1 and 2, which is a really interesting platformer. Also, A Way Out is a really popular indie game that actually got a lot of attention at the Game Awards a few years ago when the developer and or the art director kind of he said fuck the Oscars and that got a lot of attention on that game. So EA Originals, they have a pretty good track record. So the game that they're saying has leaked is called Tales of Kenzera, Zao,
Hmm.
I guess. So apparently this game is set to release in April 2024. It's going to be a 2.5D side-scrolling adventure platformer. They say it's going to be similar to the Trine games, if anyone has played the Trine games, which are a good amount of fun. I've played, I think, the first two of them. And then it's set to cost $18. So we don't really know more about this game right now. We do know who's developing it, which is, let me see here. What does it say? Uh, Man, it keeps mentioning the person that leaked it, but maybe I think it's Surgent Studios.
Hmm.
So that seems to be the developer for this one. So yeah, just really interesting to kind of see this game leak potentially right before the Game Awards, right? I imagine there's going to be a trailer for this at the Game Awards. That's usually what happens, right? Is some of those games leak right before these big shows. So this just seems to be another one. It's definitely something I'll have my eye on. I do like 2.5D side-scrolling platformers. So and at a pretty fair price of $18. Hopefully that's true. So yeah, I'll definitely keep my eye on it. But what are you thinking, Tom?
So I have a question for you because I'm not entirely familiar with how the EA Originals works, right? Because I obviously know It Takes Two, Unravel. Um, what EA is obviously a triple A studio. What
Yeah.
kind of why is it EA Originals? Is this like a separate thing? Like what makes it indie?
Yeah, so from what I understand about how EA Originals works is essentially they're offering independent studios promotion and potentially funding for their game. I think it's more on the promotional side of things of like, hey, we're going to bring you under the EA umbrella here. We'll promote you on the EA Play Store and across Madden or whatever, whatever it is. So I think it's just kind of the way that EA sort of puts these games into the spotlight a bit more, and these studios more into the spotlight, and then it's almost like they're new EA IPs without being a new EA IP.
Hmm.
So it's kind of interesting. And I think actually Microsoft does something similar, but they don't really. I don't think they have a name for it's not like Microsoft Originals or something like that. But they do kind of have an indie side of their business where they are supporting indie developers. And this also does tie into that whole Dave the Diver conversation, right? Of you know, if these EA originals are being heavily funded by EA, does it still make it an independent game? They are independent studios that are being helped out, but does it still make it an independent game? So I'm not really sure if they're super transparent about like what they're supplying to these independent studios, but if I had to guess, it's mainly promotional
Hmm.
stuff. It's really just like a partnership in that way. But yeah, that's kind of how I understand it.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting because it is a hot button topic right now, right?
Yeah.
What constitutes indie, but if it's, I mean, promotion is whatever because like as far as I'm concerned, maybe this developer making this game could have gone anywhere. Like you can go to any kind of firm, right, and just say, "Hey, I need promotional help," right? Because we don't have a marketing team; we're a developer, right? So if that's really what it is, like EA maybe gets a little bit of a cut of the game, sure, like that makes sense if they're doing some work for it,
Yeah.
understandable. But yeah, it is interesting. It sounds really fun because I know trying is a lot of fun as well if it's anything like that. So it'll be interesting. I mean, I'm sure we'll get like a trailer for it, like you said, probably
Yeah.
pretty soon. But I don't know. I don't know if Surgeon. I don't know much else from Surgeon, but it should be a lot of fun and
Yeah.
maybe something we even review at some point. And speaking of reviewing, Maddie, should
Oh
we
boy.
review this game, Born of Bread?
I think it's time to get ready.
Are you ready?
Or
I'm ready.
I'm ready. I'm ready for the main squeeze.
This is the main squeeze where we review a indie game of the week, and this game is called Born of Bread, which we did receive keys for. We are not entirely sure because we are reviewing this before the game comes out. I think this is the first time, and we do not know the actual price, but it is releasing on all, like it seems like all platforms: Steam, PS5, Switch, Xbox.
Yeah.
And do you want to give us the elevator pitch for this game?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think right out of the gate, this is a kind of a successor, spiritual successor in a way, or at least heavily influenced by Paper Mario. So if you are a Paper Mario fan, Born of Bread is definitely right up your alley. They describe it as a lighthearted adventure that's kind of centered around exploration with a combat system that's turn based, just like in Paper Mario. And then you play as a flower golem with a never ending childlike wonder who possesses an odd set of abilities. So it's definitely a very lighthearted game, very Paper Mario esque. And without getting too deep into it, because I know we're going to talk all about the gameplay, that's pretty much this game in a nutshell. And yeah, it is hard sometimes to also judge the game without knowing the actual price. In my mind, I'm just going to think of it as $30, but it could be more and it could be less. But I'm just kind of going right in the middle of it and just hoping that that's around what the price is. The developer is Wild Art Studios and the publisher is Dear Villagers. They have made some other games in the past, but yeah, Born of Bread is definitely a heavily influenced game from Paper Mario. So I think that's kind of the best way to describe it.
Yeah, it certainly is. And, art style, gameplay, and a lot of other things. And I'm interested to hear your opinions on it. Do you want to talk about gameplay real quick?
Yeah, let's do it. Like I mentioned, there's a decent amount of exploration in the game. It does have kind of some open world parts, and then there are kind of enemies that are, lurking in certain areas that will run up to you, and you'll have to fight them in turn-based combat. You have different move sets that you can unlock throughout the game. Different, just kind of items that give you different moves. You also have things called boons, which are essentially a passive ability. It could be something like, I know one of them right out of the gate in the beginning of the game that's really useful is one that tells you the weaknesses of the enemies that you're facing, because each move that you have has a different sort of element to it, that can affect enemies in different ways. So you kind of get passive abilities like that. And yeah, essentially, there's we'll get into the story because it is a pretty story heavy game, I would say. Right out of the gate, there's cutscenes and all that sort of stuff. But as far as the gameplay goes, I would say it's pretty vanilla. I didn't really find that it was like super in depth. Like it's pretty easy to understand. You're not going to be doing a bunch of combos or anything like that. One thing I did really like about the gameplay was that and I don't really remember if this was the case in Paper Mario because it's just been so long since I played that. But each move that you have in the turn-based combat kind of requires a different input on your controller if you're using controller. So you might have to jiggle the joystick. You might have to, hold down the A button and then release it at a certain point, or you might have to tap the A button at a certain point, whatever it might be. So I thought that was really interesting and kind of kept the fights a little bit more, engaging. And really, your goal in this is to essentially you're trying to find these like sunstone shards. And there's obviously a group of enemies, and we'll talk about that with the story that's also trying to collect them at the same time. And yeah, we'll get into all the story elements because there's a good amount to talk about there. But essentially, at the end of the day, I feel like this is it's a open world experience with turn-based combat, and then that's how you just kind of progress through the game. It didn't seem super in depth, but there were a good amount of things that I did like about it. So, what are you thinking, Tommy, for this?
Yeah, so my initial impressions here were obviously the Paper Mario, right? Comparisons,
Yeah.
right? Especially with the art. And, I didn't play as much Paper Mario as perhaps like you and some of our other friends. Shout out Bags. I know, big Paper Mario fan. But I did play a lot of Super Mario RPG and like like Mario and Luigi Superstars, like the RPG like on the DS and I guess it was mostly just DS, but like it definitely harks to that, especially the turn-based RPG combat, right? Where it's not just choosing an attack and it does it, right? You have to do something. There is a little bit of skill involved, and then even when you're being attacked, there's certain things, inputs you can put in to kind of perhaps take less damage or no damage at all.
Yeah.
And you get a lot of the RPG elements here where you kind of collect weapons and different kind of I guess attacks you can do or like I said, like they're essentially spells. I don't think they even really call them spells in the game, but it is very simple. So if you're looking for something super like because like RPGs can vary in terms of how in depth it can get, and this is not the game for you. However, I think this is something I really like about this game and the gameplay. Right, I find that a lot of times when you get games where it's like, this is a spiritual successor to this. This is a spiritual successor to that. Sometimes it loses a little bit of what it really meant, right? And this, like Paper Mario, right? We're saying this is somewhat of a spiritual successor here.
Yeah.
Paper Mario was for all ages, right? This game feels like it's for all ages, and I think that's a very key thing. Right? I can imagine a young child, a little boy or girl, who's just getting into video games, and even this might be their first foray into an RPG kind of game, and this feels perfect for that in terms of the gameplay. I found that it was like, oh, okay, sure, like the basic attack, right? That costs no mana to play, or they have a different resource system. Is just the gauge goes around. You have to hit A when it's in the green zone on the gauge, like a little circle. Super simple. Anybody can understand that, and that is just so nice. And then you can get deeper into the game, and then it helps you along that way. And I found that very refreshing because I think this could easily have been like, oh no, we as kids really love Paper Mario, but we really wanted to make it like super in-depth RPG.
Yeah.
That's not what you got. Like that's not what you should do with this kind of game. So I really enjoyed the gameplay. There were a couple notes I had. I wasn't through like. I understand the I guess the physics of walking around these worlds where you go downstairs and then you show up in the stairs and you have to keep moving out from it, like in terms of the aspect ratio of the game, right? Like if you go in this way, you have to keep going a certain way. At first it felt like I kept going back into the stairs
Oh, gotcha. Gotcha.
or the entryway of something. So I understand that's kind of how these games work, and maybe it's just something that I wasn't really used to. But I did enjoy the gameplay here a lot. I found myself having that same kind of childlike wonder I had when I was playing, Mario and Luigi Superstars or Paper Mario when I was a kid, and I really enjoyed that. So for me, the
Yeah.
gameplay was really really well done. It wasn't too crazy. Didn't feel like the inventory management was nuts or anything like that either. It was very
Yeah.
clear what you wanted to do, and the menu system even felt very Nintendo, right? Like
Oh, yeah.
the different pages in your like notebook, which is your menu, it reminded me of. I mean, hell, it reminded me of Ocarina of Time, like the way you kind of just flip through it. So,
Oh, yeah.
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 I was a big fan of the gameplay.
Yeah, it's you brought up a good point about like this is for all ages because I think you know in our one of our previous episodes, right, we talked about Cuiseneer and how that game was kind of a very basic roguelite sort of game, and it didn't really have a ton of depth. But we talked about how it's probably a great introductory game, right, to get into like roguelites for kids and all that sort of stuff. With this game, I can see it being that as a great introductory game, but I could also just seeing it being a great game for anyone, right? Like it's truly like an all ages sort of game. Like I was also having a great time playing and kind of had that urge to kind of see what was next, right? I wanted to get to the next part of the story or like figure something out or explore more. So I really did enjoy that. Now, in terms of like something I just forgot to mention, there are a few things actually, but for the open world like exploration, I did sometimes I found it a little tough to figure out like your depth. Like I'd be jumping up and I'd be missing something that I thought I was close enough to jump on. So stuff like that that you just probably just need to get used to, after a certain amount of time because you are kind of this 2D paper character in this 3D, world. So it can be hard to kind of figure out where you need to be. So maybe who knows? Maybe they could make that a little bit clearer in terms of like maybe the art can somehow dictate that a little bit better. In some way, there are certain mushrooms and things like that that you can jump on that kind of boost you up, and those are good indicators of moving to the next area. But I just found myself kind of missing some jumps sometimes, and I would realize quickly after the first attempt that I just wasn't close enough. I thought I was closer, but I wasn't close enough. So that's something that I definitely like noticed with the open world gameplay at least. I really didn't have any issues with the combat. I thought, like you said, and like we talked about, it's pretty basic. But one thing I did really like about it was there's a live chat kind of experience that you can get while you're doing combat, and that kind of replaces like the audience from Paper Mario, where the audience would react to certain things.
Mm-hmm.
So now they've kind of modernized it, right? Where you literally have like a live Twitch chat, but it's not actual people that's commenting on everything that's going on in the fight. And it was just like I didn't realize it would be like that when I heard about the feature in the game, and I got introduced to it. I was like, oh, okay, this is just going to be like something that I probably barely notice. But no, it's pretty noticeable, and I found it to be pretty funny too. Just as someone that also has streamed a lot, and laughed a lot at Twitch chat because of how ridiculous it can be. I thought that was a pretty neat feature. And then just lastly about the gameplay, something that I thought was really cool, and I'm not sure if there are more moments like this in the game. But there's a moment kind of in the early game where you're in these mines and there's a machine that is like a hydraulic press and it just presses your character down. And just for reference, you're playing as a character named Loaf. We'll get into the whole story part of it, but he is essentially just like a piece of bread, I guess, or like a loaf of bread that has been turned into a person. So this hydraulic press can actually press you down and flatten you so that you can access different areas of the map, which is cool. You're kind of lower and you can, slide under things. But it also gives you the ability to jump further because if you jump, you kind of turn into like a little parachute guy and you can like jump further. And I just thought that was really cool. I was a little, it was a little odd that the game didn't really tell me any of that. I just kind of stumbled upon this like hydraulic press and I was like, I wonder what happens if I stand underneath it. Like, will I die? And it was kind of like that aha moment of like, oh, this is like a whole new mechanic. Like I can, I wonder in what other ways can loaf be manipulated to get to different areas of the map. So yeah, I just thought that was a really cool like aha moment that they had. I would have probably liked if they introduced it a little bit
Hmm.
in the game, but I did find that to be really cool.
Well, I think
Yeah,
that brings up a good point about the game. Like, it definitely wants you to explore things. Like, even like with what you mentioned about like maybe I couldn't jump on that thing, and I thought I could, and I tried a couple times. I realized I couldn't.
yeah,
This is something we see in a lot of modern games that we used to not ever see, where they just say, "Hey, no, figure it out," right? Which is not a bad thing, and I think it probably stems from you know like even games. I mean, I hate to say it, but like Minecraft is probably a great example of like a first game that a lot of different kind of people played, right?
yeah,
Where you just drop on a place and you got to figure things out. And I think that a lot of people, like that. And maybe that's what they were thinking there. But yeah, the idea of exploring the
yeah.
areas to figure out the puzzle is a cool thing, and I think it actually is a feature, not a bug, as they say. But yeah,
Yeah.
what'd you think about the story?
Honestly, I thought it was pretty funny. I really did enjoy it, and unfortunately, since the game isn't out yet, it's hard to know how long the story is. But just from I looked up on YouTube some playthroughs, and it looked like it took about 11 hours to complete the game. So like I don't know if that person did all the side quests and all that sort of stuff, but I'm just gonna kind of talk about it from that frame of reference, just for the listeners to know. But yeah, so for the story, you kind of start off as like Papa Baker, right? You're the baker that's working in this massive castle. You're kind of the head chef for the head baker for this queen who is just she's just very mean and terrible. And so you're obviously baking a few different things, and she wants you to bake something out of this book that you have never seen before. It's like this big recipe book, from the olden times or whatever it might be. And then you accidentally create Loaf, who comes out, and as soon as Loaf comes out, like the baker is just like Papa Baker is just like he's fine with it. He's like, oh, I guess I just made a living thing out of bread. So he seems to be fine with it, which I just thought was pretty funny. There's definitely a lot of comedy in the dialogue where between the characters and even the mean characters and the evil characters, they just kind of they'll make fun of each other because of like the way they said something or the way they look or how ridiculous they're being. Um, and there was one particular thing that made me laugh where there's like a skill point upgrade person that kind of stands near a shrine. You first see. I actually haven't found the. I don't think unless I missed. I haven't found another shrine yet. But from what I know is that these shrines are kind of all over the place where you can spend your skill points. And what I kind of thought was funny with the dialogue for that person was my character asks, well, how can you be at every shrine? Like, how is that possible? And like the person at the shrine, the skill point upgrade person was just like, it's a tough gig, but somebody has to do it. And I just kind of thought that was funny because it's just like they didn't have to comment on that at all. Like, we all understand game mechanics and like, okay, this is where I upgrade stuff. Like, I'm gonna see this person again. But I just kind of thought that was funny that they threw that in there. And then yeah, so just to kind of give some context on what happens in the story and why you're doing these sort of things as Loaf, is that you're essentially in the Queen's quarters as Papa Baker and Loaf, and there is a kind of an explosion that happens. The bad guys come in, and they essentially push you back out into the forest. They capture Papa Baker. They put him in the middle of the town because they think he was behind it. Essentially, the Queen thinks he was behind the bad guys doing all this sort of stuff and breaking into her quarters and all that. And obviously, she's wrong. Papa Baker had nothing to do with it. All right, he's a good guy, and he just wants to bake some bread. So they lock him up in the middle of town, and then you have to go essentially try to save him. You're trying to find these sunstone shards, which the enemies are also looking for. And then there's also a group of explorers. I kind of forgot a group of professors that you meet in the beginning, and they're the ones who accidentally release the bad guys into the world by messing with some tombs and just really not doing what they should have been doing. So, yeah, that's kind of the plot of the story is you're trying to rescue Papa Baker. You're trying to defeat these bad guys in the meantime, and I imagine at some point the Queen's going to be out of there, and maybe Papa Baker becomes the king or something like that. That's kind of what I'm thinking is going to happen. I haven't beaten the game yet, but yeah, overall, I thought the story was lighthearted. I thought it was fun. There's a good amount of dialogue. You can talk with a lot of different characters that aren't the main characters, and they always kind of got something funny to say. I had to find someone's like fake backpack earlier, which I don't know why they needed like a fake tool chest. It was like something that was fake, and they wanted me to find it. I just kind of thought that was kind of weird, but yeah, it definitely lighthearted and fun, and I had a good time with the story so far, and I definitely want to play more just to kind of see what happens. But what are you thinking, Tom, on the story?
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I found it to be funny and simple, but like, it kind of reminded me of like old cartoons, right? Like the villains in the old cartoons, right? They were evil or whatever, but they were like kind of whatever. Like they're not that evil. Like Gargamel, like Mojo Jojo, stuff like that. Like stuff. You just kind of you don't root for them, but you're like, oh, whatever. They're just like kind of weird and stupid a little bit, and sometimes they get the upper hand, and sometimes they don't. And I enjoyed that was what this vibe was, right? And it didn't feel at all to me like that they were trying to, like, even the tongue-in-cheek stuff, it wasn't like, oh yeah, the adults are gonna get this, like you mentioned the shrine person, right? Yeah. Saying that, I think that's kind of funny for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Like even a kid would be like, well, like a kid would have that thought, like, how are you at all these different shrines, right?
Yeah.
And just the fact that it's like, yeah, hey, somebody's got to do it. And it's going to be funny, like a different kind of funny to the kid than it is to somebody perhaps older. And I like that they're not pandering to any certain kind of group, right? It's kind of very, and this is something that like DreamWorks does really well, especially the Shrek movies, right? It's just kind of like, everybody kind of enjoys this. It's all kind of funny in different ways to a lot of different people. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoy like the color scheme of just the bad guys being purple, and it's just like that's the bad guy color, and you got to deal with it. And I don't know. I mean, it's not deep. It's not a deep story, but it's got this kind of like Pinocchio thing going on with Papa Baker and Loaf. Yeah. So like,
it does.
So I mean. It's kind of stops there, like it's not a complete Pinocchio story, but it's like, and it is also funny. It's like Papa Baker or whatever his name is creates Loaf, and then he's like, I'm a dad now. I'm a dad. Oh my God, your name's Papa. Like,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
true.
like,
Yeah, how'd you
yeah,
get the name Papa if
yeah,
you're not
like,
already a dad? Maybe
that-
he disowned his child for loaf, you know? He's starting anew.
I was thinking like, what if he like, yeah, like he just like forgot he had kids, and this is like, this is my I'm now a dad, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't know. It was just very fun. It was. It didn't. It's a nice change of pace, right? You know,
Yeah.
and you know, you mentioned Cuisinier and whatever. We might have came down pretty hard in that game or whatever, but you know, this is also very beginner friendly or very like, and anybody can enjoy this, but it also has some heart,
Yeah.
right? I felt like having heart in a game like this is important because you kind of care for Loaf, you care about Papa, you care about all the other auxiliary characters. You know, they give some, you know, personality to these characters, and I enjoyed it. I think a lot of people will too. So
Yeah.
that's what I thought on the story. But
Yeah. Absolutely. I just had one other thing to
yeah,
add as well that I just remember that was kind of funny, where you're first kind of getting introduced to the sun shards, and you're walking down this hallway, and there is I don't know, there's like a bench. There's kind of like this glass case with a sun shard in it, and then there's a statue next to it. And there's a little bit down the hall. There's kind of a security, there's a guard, like a guard in like shining armor or whatever it is, for the castle, and he's not letting you go up these stairs. So what you have to end up doing is you have to knock over this statue, hit the glass case, and the sun shard comes out. And then once you grab it, the guard that was just there, because I'm thinking like, oh man, like I'm gonna have to fight this guy. This is gonna be like a turn-based combat. He just goes, oh man, I'm out of here, and like he just runs away because he's like, I don't want to deal with like all this, damage that you just did to the castle, and then you can go up the stairs. And I just thought like that's such a clever way and a funny way, and something that kids would really enjoy too. Of just kind of getting to the next area as you kind of like do something wrong in order to
mm,
get to the next area. But yeah, this game, like story wise, like I don't know, I like there's so many Nintendo vibes. I'm like, man, I
mm,
just like I would not be surprised if like Wild Art Studio was like ex Nintendo devs were there. It just has all those vibes, and definitely when it comes to the art, which I know is the next part that we want to talk about. There's tons of Nintendo vibes with the art, from my perspective. But what did you think about the art, Tom?
it was excellent, right? You know, I think it's right. Like we keep making comparisons to Paper Mario, and it ends up actually being a lot different, especially in the art style. You know, Paper Mario was very, very, it's like thematic. This is paper, right? This is blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. You know, this feels more like, hey, we have some like cartoon characters in this 3D world, right? That's what it felt like, a little bit more like 2D cartoon characters, and it allows for some like really beautiful level design, and also having like really animated characters, right? Because that can be like an issue, right? Like when you try to do an art style that maybe is a little bit more realistic or whatever, or even a little bit more static, like
Hmm.
like Paper Mario, that you can't really have this kind of animated, lifelike character design. And I think that they nail that here, where it feels like very dynamic and animated with these characters. So I really enjoyed it. Everything really made sense. It was very cartoony. If you like that style, you're going to enjoy this game. At least looking at it, right? And I think that I don't know. I don't really have many complaints about it. Like I guess like the one complaint I had was kind of tied into the gameplay, where like sometimes you just can't really tell what's interactable, I guess,
Yeah.
or what you can jump on, or because you have like a ladle and you can bust things open, but some things look like you could do it, but you can't. And then that would be my main complaint with the art style and the visuals here. But other than that, it just looked and moved smoothly, and I enjoyed it. And even in uh, the fights, the combat. It was, turn-based can be whatever, but it felt very dynamic, which was very nice, based on the art style and like how like the different moves and stuff like that kind of played out in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I think they did a great job with the art for the game. Like you mentioned, it's not 100% Paper Mario. Like they have these great 3D environments that they're not too complicated, at least the ones that I played, but like they still kind of make you feel like, when you're in the forest in the beginning of the game, like I felt like I was exploring this like mythical forest, that was next to this castle. They did a great job with that, and kind of the ambience of that forest. And then, yeah, when it comes to fighting, like, some of the character design of like the enemies that you're fighting is pretty cool. Like there's, some of them that are like these fire rock creatures that look really awesome. And so I think there's been a lot of like clever designs for the villains and just for the enemies that you face along the way. And yeah, as far as like the animation goes, like you kind of have this sort of right, like stop motiony sort of paper animation for your characters, but then everything else is kind of a smoother animation of that's the 3D environment around you. So yeah, I thought it was great. And then even like the castle itself, like I just was like, this is I feel like I'm playing like Mario 64, right? Where like it just kind of gave me those vibes of like that's the way that castle looks in that game, and so that's how it kind of looks in this game. It's not exactly like that, but those are just kind of the vibes I was getting. And then, also like you were mentioning, like, it could be tough to know what you can break. Like specifically, I was thinking about like while you were mentioning that there's like these little piles of leaves that you can find in the forest, and you can actually hit those open with a ladle, and you get like your they're little clovers. That's kind of like your currency for certain things. So you can hit those kind of piles of leaves open, and you get a clover or a few clovers out of it. But I didn't realize that kind of at first. I just kind of thought that was in the background in the forest, because some of the other items that you can break open, there's like certain barrels and things like that, things that kind of make more sense that you can hit open. But for piles of leaves, I just didn't realize at first that I could actually hit a pile of leaves open, and then there would be something in there. So I definitely understand that like some of the interactable items could probably be tweaked slightly, so that you can interact with them. Like maybe it's even just like a little shine that the item has. Every 10 seconds it just kind of has a little shine on it, and that way you kind of know that you can interact with it. But yeah, overall, I thought the art was pretty solid for the game, and it's just it's just so nostalgic going and playing this. I also know I think Undertale, which unfortunately I've actually never played Undertale, but I believe it also has kind of a papery sort of art style, if I remember correctly. I just saw some people comparing this game to Undertale as well. So I know that was a really popular indie game when that came out. So if you're a fan of Undertale and that art style, I'm sure that you'll kind of like this one as well, even though this one is definitely more on the whimsical side of things. But yeah, it's just they just did a killer job with the art. I mean, I kind of would love to see more games in this sort of Paper Mario art style. I think we've talked about that before, especially getting like Paper Mario added to Smash. Like part of that for me is because the art, it would just look so cool. I don't even care about his, I don't really care about like if he's going to be good or not, but like imagine his move set. Like it's going to be awesome. It's going to look papery. It's just going to be so cool. So I would love to see more games like try this sort of art style. And even like a roguelike or something like that would be great. Cuisinier, maybe the paper art style instead of the anime. Sorry, don't mean to keep dunking on that game, but it's just a good frame of reference. It's a good frame of reference, to be honest. Yeah. But yeah, no, overall, I mean, they killed it with the art.
No, absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned Smash. I mean, if they could do Game & Watch, they could do Paper Mario. Just saying, yeah. Nintendo.
Yeah, we know you're listening.
But also, one last note I have here about the art is I guess you'd call it like a heads up display, like during the battles, right?
Yeah.
Very, very clean. Like you got your HP of each character and the color that matches it, and then you have your different kinds of mana that you can use, your resources. and then there's an icon up in the left, like the top left, with all that information of each of the characters that are on your team for these battles. And even they have like, like in like I guess a cartoon where like people are about to fight or something like that, and it does like a close up on the eyes.
Oh yeah.
Or like the top half of their face, and it looks like it's
Yeah.
moving. It just has that look, right? If you look at the heads up display, and it's just like it adds to the whole flavor, and that's like really nice to see. I think that's really cool. So
Yeah.
Now, the sound. Did you have a good time with the sound as well?
Yeah, I honestly I didn't mind the sound at all. For me, I don't really remember anything where like I'm like, oh man, I gotta look up this soundtrack and I gotta play this specific track, anything like that. I haven't finished the game yet though, so there's still potential for that. But I know at least in the forest, it was like a pretty calming experience when like you're exploring, and then like the music while you're battling, I really did enjoy, where it's kind of this like upbeat sort of music, at least for the fights that I was doing, where it was just kind of, it reminded me a little bit of like Pokemon in a way, kind of just like, oh man, this is like intense. Like and Pokemon also, that would be a great franchise to try this art style as well. That could be really cool, but aside from the fact, but yeah, no, the sound overall, I thought the sound effects were great. Opening up your notepad or your notebook and kind of going through the pages with that. And then, just some of like the ambient noise of like some of the creatures in the world and like your companion that you have with you. And then even just like the kind of the dialogue sounds that happen kind of gave me a little bit of like Animal Crossing vibes in a way, not as prominent as Animal Crossing, but yeah, no, overall, I thought the sound was solid. Sound effects, everything from sound effects to music. It was kind of exactly what I sort of expected with a game like this, yeah, overall, I just really enjoyed it.
Yeah, nothing. I'm right there with you. That it's
Yeah,
nothing really to write home about, right? I'm not like, whoa, that was the most amazing music I've ever heard in a game ever, but matched the vibe,
yeah,
and the sound effects definitely, made sense for what they were. The, I guess I was not. I think for whatever reason, it felt like there was something left to be desired with the text box sounds. I know you mentioned it's like close to Animal Crossing, but it has that little,
yeah, a
you
little
know,
subtle,
yeah.
very subtle.
I
Yeah,
think they could have probably amped it up a bit. I don't think. I think this game could have done that and it would have fit right in, to be honest.
yeah,
But that's really my only real complaint there. It was a nice sounding game, and it's a nice looking game, I will say, I had fun with it. But did you have any? So you played on Steam, right?
yeah. I played on Steam, and you played on Switch, right?
Yeah.
So
Did you have any
this is
performance issues?
no performance issues really for me, other than sometimes, and this is maybe more on the art side, I guess. But sometimes when two characters were overlapping, so if I just went into a new area and I had like, for example, I had like Lint, who's like one of your companions in the early game, and Papa Baker, when you kind of went into the next area, they'd be standing on top of each other, and I guess the game didn't know which one should kind of be in the foreground, so it would just kind of glitch like really
Wow.
quickly until I moved, and then they kind of separated. So I think when the characters are stacking on each other, there's a little graphical glitch there that I'm sure that they're gonna patch. But in terms of like performance, like overall, like the game ran really smooth for me. And I think this is the first time also that we're going to be talking about a game that we played on two different platforms. So I'm really curious to see kind of what was the Switch experience like, because we know historically, it hasn't been great. But for a game like this, I would hope it would be okay. But how did that go, Tom?
This is actually not the first game that we played on two different platforms. I played Cocoon on the Switch.
Oh, you did. Oh, wow,
Yeah.
right out of the gate. Okay.
But yeah, I did play this on the Switch. Now, the only issue I had was the loading screen in the beginning, and funny enough, I'm looking here at the review guide that they sent us, and it is a known issue, and they are patching it. It's probably going to be patched upon release. So that's the only thing I ran into, and I was like, oh well, that's kind of interesting that's already being fixed. So yeah, no real performance issues. I thought it ran great, and I didn't even have it docked. I was playing it handheld. So
Yeah. What was the loading issue? Just like it took forever to load, or was there like a weird glitch or something?
I don't know, because basically it felt like the game wasn't loading. Basically.
Oh. Okay.
It's hard to explain, to be honest, because I was like confused. I restarted it, and then it also just didn't have like any kind of, I don't know how it is on the PC, so I don't know. I can't really compare it to anything, but like it was kind of like, oh, start a new game. Like after like it did this weird loading screen for a while, but it looks like they're fixing that. So yeah, but let's get to the review, like the actual rating here.
Yeah.
Which, folks, if this is your first time listening, we have a rating system that goes from best to worst, all grocery store themed, because we are fresh juice after all.
Yes.
Highest rating, certified fresh juice. After that, it's a steal, right? You get it at the price. That's a good game. This is great. Awesome. B tier is your get on sale, right? Wait till it goes on sale. We have a lot of sales these days, especially with indie games. Manager special is after that. It's like, it's kind of not that great, but like if you can get it for like $1 or $2, or even like for free, like it's probably worth checking out. Like it could also improve over the years with like some updates. And then Spoiled Milk, which nobody wants, the worst game ever, and you don't want to play it. So with all that being said, Matthew, what is your rating for Born of Bread?
Yeah, so without knowing the price of the game, it was hard for me to choose an exact rating that I was 100% confident with. So if at any point, or well, I guess tomorrow, or by the time you guys listen to this episode, we'll know what the price is, and maybe that'll influence my choice. But I'm gonna go with a steal here. I thought that this is maybe not as nostalgic as something like Paper Mario. I know there's I think a remaster of Paper Mario coming for 1,000 Year Door, and that I'm sure people will probably like more than Born of Bread. But I think Born of Bread does a really great job of kind of satisfying all of the elements of a game, right? Like the gameplay is good, the art, the story is interesting and funny. It doesn't have a ton of depth to it, but a game like this, like you mentioned, is really just for like all ages, and it's just a fun game to play. So I would say, without knowing the price, if you want to get this on sale at any point, maybe it's I'm not giving it an on sale rating, but if it's like a $60 game, I would say it's maybe not a steal. That's probably on sale. But if it's a $30 game, I'm going to say that this is a steal from my point of view. But yeah, that's what I'm going with, Tommy.
So while you were talking, I did take a quick look at what is the name of this developer again? Sorry.
Wild Arts.
Or actually the publisher, Dear Villagers.
Yes.
I took a look at some of the other games they've published, which look just as good as this, and none of them were more than $25, right?
Okay.
So I imagine this is going to probably land around the same. If I were to guess, I could obviously take that with a grain of salt. We don't really know, but some of these other games look almost close to AAA, right? And they were still landing at $25, which I think is a real nice sweet spot for this game. But if I'm going to remove price completely, I'm going to give this a very high steal, right? I think this game has a lot going for it. There's only a few things that I would like to see different, right? And the only reason I'm not giving it a certified fresh juice, because we've certainly talked the praises of this game throughout the whole episode, is it's not for everybody, right? And I think for me, like, I enjoy it, and I will likely continue to play it, but it's not like one of those games, like, let's say I beat it and I'm like, I want to do another run or something like that. It's like a pleasurable experience. I don't think it's the best thing ever, but it is very good, and I would definitely say this is a really cool game for all ages. If you're a little bit younger, you want to try something like this, or even have kids and you want them to like play something super family friendly, this is it. But that being said, I don't think it. Some people just, this is not like a hardcore gamer experience, so like, it's hard to say, but it's definitely a high steal for me. I really enjoyed this game, and I'm going to continue to enjoy the game, and I got to give the publishers and the developers a very, hey, kudos. You really did something with this game, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it kind of creep into a lot of people's game rotation going forwards when it comes out. So
yeah,
born
absolutely.
Amen.
Also, just for the listeners to know, the devs have been kind enough to send us a physical press kit for this game. So we don't know what's in that, but we will post a video on our Twitter and our TikTok of us checking it out. So if you haven't followed us over there at Fresh Juice Pod, definitely do so, because we'll be talking more about the game. And it's just another reason for us to love the game as well, right? Like, the devs have just been so awesome with us and kind of our newer podcast we've got here. So definitely a big shout out to them. But yeah, a big reason I didn't give it a certified fresh juice is, just from I was close to kind of I was thinking about that, but I just didn't end up getting there because of like, the game is original, but it's also felt like something I played before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, with like Cocoon, I gave a certified fresh juice because I've never played anything like that before, and it just had really interesting mechanics. This one, it was close, but yeah, I think really strong showing from the devs here for a Paper Mario successor, right? Spiritual successor, and who knows? I mean, I would love to see if they did Born of Bread 2, or maybe I don't know, Born of Pita or something like that. Whatever it is, maybe different types of bread. Who knows? In a different country, but yeah, it could be cool. But yeah, definitely big props to the devs for doing a great job with the game.
Amen. Amen. Now, let's get to some listener questions, then say our goodbyes. First listener question comes from Kay Moore, who asks, are either of you following the development closely for any upcoming indie games? I am, personally, and
Go
I'd
ahead.
love to hear. Well, first is Goons: Legends of Mayhem, which we've mentioned on the show a couple times. It's a hockey, like a kind of, it's almost a Nintendo-y hockey game, like think of like Super Mario Strikers or something like that. That we played at PAX, that we're very excited for it to come out. I hope soon. Like, I think Christmas time would be perfect for it. If you're listening out there. Bomb Sorters is yet another one that I follow. I think they're doing a play test on Saturday. I might even like hop on and just play, which would be kind of cool. Bomb Sorters is really, really cool game. Small team of three people. It's a brawler. It's the most unique brawler I've ever played. Just so cool. The mechanics are awesome. And then finally, I don't know if this really counts, but every once in a while, so I'm in this Discord, and I think you are too.
I know what you're gonna say.
Gauntlet Dark Legacy Remastered. Now, obviously, Gauntlet Dark Legacy was not an indie game. It was made by Midway Games, but unfortunately, Midway Games kind of went away, right? So a lot of the fans of that game are trying to remaster it, and I believe they're getting I don't even know. Let's see, I'm looking now. Progress, quite some time. This came out last week. They put a lot of traps in. They tweaked food. Like they're working on it actively. So if you ever played Gauntlet Dark Legacy, which was on all the platforms at the time, GameCube, Xbox, PS2, gosh, that game was awesome. So
oh yeah,
yeah, that would be another one.
Yeah, I hope that comes out. I mean, well, Do you think it's going to come out before Bomb Sorters? Like, what you want to? What's the over under?
No, no,
like,
I don't think it.
yeah,
I don't think it can because this is a passion project, you know.
yeah,
So I hope Bomb Swords comes out soon. I don't know what the heck they're doing over there, but you know what? I hope that they're taking forever for a reason, and then it's going to be the
yeah,
biggest indie game of all time.
yeah. I mean, it's a ton of fun. It really is. But yeah, from my point of view, I also had Goons Legends of Mayhem on my list. Just a super fun game. I hope if it's not out by the next PAX, I hope it's at PAX because I just want to play it again. They
Hmm.
don't have a demo out. They don't have anything out right now. I just want to play it and have some fun. So definitely Goons, Legends, and Mayhem. And then for those of you, I mentioned this on the show before, but for those of you who know me as well, I love survival games. And there's always a new survival game coming out around the corner. And this year, or sorry, next year, is particularly really strong for survival games and kind of also sort of the end of this year as well. But we had Return to Moria. We're going to be having the day before that's going to be coming out. But for me, for next year, what I'm really looking forward to that I've been following is a game called Nightingale. So this game is a really interesting take on a survival game where it's kind of really fantasy based. It's very like there's a lot of weird creatures and weird people in the game. But what has me excited about it is the whole premise of the game is you can play with other people and you can open up portals to other worlds. And that's how you can go get your resources and things of that nature. You can probably build over there too. I'm not 100% sure. They've had a lot of like closed tests for their alpha and I guess maybe even their beta. But I haven't been able to get into them because of scheduling conflicts or I just haven't been invited. But I think they have one that's upcoming early next year and hopefully I can get into that. I won't be able to talk about it, unfortunately, because it's under NDA still. But Nightingale is definitely something I'm really looking forward to. And then the last game on my list is Under a Rock. This is a game I have made a few TikToks about it. It's really early in development, but they actually just released a trailer for it, surprisingly. So I'm hoping that next year we get to see the game. I don't think there's a lot of people working on it. I think it's probably less than 10, if I had to guess. But this is one of the most interesting and I think just has so much potential, like a survival game that's coming out hopefully next year, where the entire world is procedural. It just, you can go into a cave and it's going to be a completely different cave based on like, if you go in your friend's world and you go to a similar looking cave, I think we all understand how procedural works, but, so that's really cool because that adds to the replayability, but also just it's being built in Unreal Engine 5 and it's kind of this cartoony vibe. It almost is like Fortnite-y, which I've always really wanted, like a survival game that's kind of the Fortnite art style as well as being built on Unreal Engine 5 because Unreal Engine, we've seen all the stuff that Fortnite has done. It's just it just opens the door for like so many cool possibilities. I mean, Eminem just had a concert in Fortnite, which they've done, before with other artists. It's just like no other game is doing that sort of stuff. So having a survival game where maybe there's really cool dynamic events that happen, like oh, this weekend in Under a Rock, there's going to be, I don't know, a meteor's going to crash like in your world or whatever it is. So I think there's a lot of potential. It has really great systems. It's got pet systems, mounting systems, really great building systems with like a ghost building mode and just all this stuff that like I really nerd out on in survival games. Like I'm very critical of a lot of things in survival games because there are certain games that do it really well, and then you play a game that doesn't do a particular thing well, and you're just like, if only you could just do what this other game did. So Under a Rock, right out of the gate, everything that they've shown, everything that I've made kind of videos on TikTok, has just looked fantastic. Like they're really thinking about the big picture here for this game. So I'm hoping there's a beta or something like that. I've already kind of talked to the devs in their Discord, and there's just no news on the game right now. But I've been following it pretty closely, and that's definitely towards the top of my list for most anticipated indie games that I'm following.
Well, it certainly sounds like a lot of fun, especially
Oh yeah,
Nightingale. I need to look into that because that sounds like up my alley for sure. Um,
yeah. I
next,
think the art
oh,
style. Sorry, I think the art style for Nightingale will definitely be something that you think is really interesting
oh,
because it's just like so weird, like everything that kind of is in the game. It's like this fantasy realm that you're in. So definitely check it out and let me know.
Oh yeah, well maybe we review it at some point. Um,
Ooh.
Next question comes from rcarp11. My roommate. Piggybacking off of the Dave the Diver fiasco, do you anticipate more large non-indie studios trying to pull the same thing?
Good question.
Yeah.
So what comes to mind is what we were talking about with EA Originals earlier in the show, where, I don't know if any of those studios are going to try to, still claim that they're independent if EA is funding them. But I could see maybe something happening in that realm of like EA Originals kind of getting in that mess, especially if whatever that game that leaked, if that ends up being a Game of the Year contender or at the Game Awards, we're going to see some backlash around that if EA is really like funding them, pretty heavily. But yeah, it's interesting. I really think we're only going to get into hot water with that if there's a game that's nominated.
Mm-hmm.
I think if a game comes out, like if Dave the Diver was never nominated, no one would be talking about it right now.
Yeah.
No one would care that they call themselves indie. It's only when like awards and accolades kind of come into the picture where people will start being more critical. So I don't really anticipate more like non-indie studios trying to kind of be part of the awards for indie games. I think that's really where the core of the issue is. And if they did, I just think it's a dumb move because the internet is pretty smart about that stuff, and they're going to call you out like immediately, just like they did with Dave the Diver. So yeah, I don't anticipate like non-indie studios doing that sort of stuff. I think they're really focused on like their AAA games and kind of winning awards for that and getting the attention all on those games that they pour so much money into as well. So yeah, but what do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree. I don't think it's going to be an issue until something's nominated. I think we can only hope that the folks at the Game of the Year awards, organization, kind of keep that in mind. And I have to imagine right now that Dave the Diver got nominated and there was so much backlash that I mean, I would be shocked if they don't look at it a little bit more closely going forward. So I think it's going to happen. Like, you mentioned the EA Originals thing and whatever. Maybe we have to like clearly define what indie game means, right? Is it independently developed, or does it encompass the whole process of putting out a game? So
Yeah.
I think once we get more definition, I think we can probably answer is better. But it's a great question nonetheless. But yeah. Well, Matty, I think that's going to bring us to the Rec Room, which is when we recommend something perhaps that's not an indie game. What do you have to recommend this week before we say our goodbyes?
So what I'm recommending to the listeners here, and this is something that you're already aware of, this is a food item. It is the Nashville Hot Snyder's of Hanover pretzels. All right. So I picked some up. I think you were the one that showed them to me originally, and I picked some up at the store over the weekend. And they're delicious. I will say though, for me, they're hard to snack on because of the spice. I just can't have a ton of them because I just end up being like, I can't even enjoy the show I'm watching right now because of it. But there is just so much flavor in each piece of pretzel. Like it is just fantastic. And it's even to the point, this is when I knew it was perfect for the Rec Room when I was thinking about it. I gave it to Maria, my wife, for the listeners who don't know, and she thought it was delicious. And she doesn't really like Nashville hot stuff, but and she also just like flavored things in general that like I usually like because it's just like it's something that's terrible for you, And then I'm like, oh, it's just so good, like dill pickle chips, like or whatever it is. So when she had it, she was like, oh, it's really good. I was like, right, like there's so much flavor just in the one piece. Like you can go through the whole experience of like having a Nashville hot chicken sandwich just in one pretzel. So that's my Rec Room. Definitely go check them out. Snyder's of Hanover makes great stuff in general. But pick up the honey mustard and onion and the Nashville hot pretzels, and you won't be sorry. But yeah, that's it for me.
Oh man, I'm glad you mentioned that. Hey, listen, Snares of Hanover, if you're listening, we know you are. We'd love a sponsorship, right? Tropicana hasn't gotten back to us, so hey, listen, we'll become Fresh Pretzels. We don't give a shit, but
yeah.
But no, those pretzels are awesome, and that is a great point that you can't eat a lot, but like maybe that's the good thing because like sometimes like the honey mustard onion ones are the OGs. You can eat like a whole bag and you just
demolish it.
It's just like 10,000 calories, no big deal.
Yeah.
But I also have a food item too. This is more, I mean, it's delicious, right? What I'm about to say. And a lot of you may have had it already, but it's a value play. It is the Costco rotisserie chicken. $4.99 for this big, plump, juicy chicken. It's so good. It's like the value is insane, right? We had it some for dinner. We just added to another dish. We were just like, we were doing microwave, like something microwavable. It's like, yeah, this is really good, but we just know there's not going to be enough chicken. So I was like, well, I made the kind of connections. Like you go to a restaurant, you order chicken, like you get a salad and you get some chicken added to the salad. It's $3 to $5 already. We're buying a $5 chicken that we can both put extra chicken on our meal and have leftover, right? It's just insane. So yeah, Costco, I could praise Costco for days and days and days. So
hot dogs,
rotis.
Yeah, everything, man.
The chicken
mac and cheese.
Oh, the mac and cheese is insane. We did the mac and cheese for Thanksgiving this year. It was awesome.
Yeah.
But anyway, folks, I think that's going to do it for the show. Born of Bread somehow did not recommend any. Well, I guess pretzels are kind of a bread item for the rec room. But where can people find you, Matthew?
Yeah, if you want to follow me outside the show, at Matty Gorm, Gorm, on all the socials, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all that sort of stuff. And then, of course, at Fresh Juice Pod on all the socials as well. We'll be posting some stuff up there for the Born of Bread press kit that I'm very excited to receive, and we'll check that out. So definitely follow us over there if you'd like to. And that's it for me, Tommy. Now, you mentioned earlier in the show you had another podcast. Where can they find more about that?
I do. It's called Fresh and Buds. It covers the game Flesh and Blood TCG, which I was playing over the weekend. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the show, you can find that on all platforms, YouTube, Spotify, Google, yada, yada, yada. And find me on Twitter at FreshBudsPod. And you can also find all of our stuff on all of our socials for this show, at Fresh Juice Pod. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Hey, listen, that's the best way to support us.
OnlyFans.
Only juice.
Only juice, baby.
But yeah, that's gonna do it for the show.
I love everybody. Take care.
Goodbye.